Dr. Jeanette Sutton is an associate professor and director of graduate studies in the College of Emergency Preparedness, Homeland Security, and Cybersecurity at the University of Albany, SUNY. She is one of the foremost experts on risk communication and a very prolific disaster researcher. So Jeanette, I will go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. And just give me a second. I am setting up my screen. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all today and to share with you a little bit about some future work that we've just begun. So I'll be talking today about writing effective warning messages and telling you about the Message Design Dashboard project. My co-investigators on this project are Ramon Gil Garcia and Derek Worthmuller, both from the Center for Technology and Government at the University of Albany. And this research that we have begun is funded by FEMA IPAWS. So where did we start? Some of this should probably be very familiar to you because you've already taken the technical assistance trainings. But if you look at the theoretical foundations for warning messages, we look at the socio-behavioral responses. We know that messages have to first be received through various channels, and the intention is to shift people's perceptions of safety to a perception of risk. And as alert and warning providers, you know that this can be very difficult to do. And the intention at the end is to have a behavioral response that takes people to safety. This is done primarily through designing messages that are shaped around the message contents that you've been trained to work with, looking at the source, the hazard, the location, the guidance, and the time. And people are undertaking a series of perceptions and activities as they're looking at messages. Primarily, they have to understand the message. They have to believe that the message is intended for them. They have to personalize the message, knowing that it is for their location or for their population. And they have to decide what they want to do in response to the content within that message. And then it's all done interactively through this process that we call milling, which is collective behavior of confirming that the information is accurate and truthful and looking at the social and environmental cues around you as you make a decision about what to do. And this is taking place very, very quickly and all almost at the same time. This was built by Maletti and Sorensen in 1991. It has affected all of our research on disaster warnings for the last 30 years. But we wanted to know how can you apply this to 90 character wireless emergency alerts? And we started doing that with this early WIA research that began in around 2001 with funding from the Department of Homeland Security, Science and Technology Directorate under Dennis Gusty's program office, which IPAWS is directly related to. Our first research project, we launched it. It was under the guidance of Dr. Dennis Maletti, who was also my advisor at University of Colorado at Boulder. My colleagues, Dr. Hamilton Bean at the University of Colorado, Denver, Dr. Brooke Fisher-Liu, who's at the University of Maryland, and Dr. Michelle Wood, who's at California State University, Fullerton. We published several reports from that project, things that you've seen probably. In 2015, we published 2 qualitative analyses about how people look at disaster warnings on mobile devices. In 2017, Michelle led the effort writing an article on milling and public warnings and how people take information and turn it into information they can understand and decide from. And then at the same time that these publications were being developed, there were other activities that were occurring at the same time. We recognized when we looked across all of these different studies that there were some primary findings. And one of them you're all very familiar with, I'm sure, is that 90 character messages result in milling. We also found that there are optimized formats for the 90 and 360 character messages. And we can draw from the research record to build better short messages. In other words, all of the work that was developed by Maletti and Sorensen in the early 1990s applies to all messaging types, regardless of it being short or long. So some additional research that we undertook right after the initial work that was done with the funding from the DHS was work that was funded by the National Science Foundation, looking at tsunami warning messages, conducting focus groups, and also online experiments. We looked at false alerts and cancellation messages. In particular, we looked at the Hawaii wireless emergency alert that was sent in 2018 and collected qualitative research findings from people in Hawaii who experienced that initial message and the cancellation message. We're currently investigating how people who receive a post-alert message following a false alert for an earthquake early warning, how they understand and interpret those messages, and how it affects their trust in the system and in future messages, with funding from USGS and NSF. And one of the projects that you probably have seen is the work that was conducted with Erica Kulagowski, my colleague who was at NIST, on alerts and warnings from short messaging channels, guidance from an expert panel process, which helped to design those templates that you've been utilizing when you create your messages for 90 characters and also for 360 character messages. So before I tell you about the specific project that we have launched with funding from FEMA, I'd like you to spend just a moment answering 3 poll questions that Amanda Savitt is going to post to the screen in front of you. Please take a moment to answer each of these questions, and I will be quiet while you address them.
It looks like we've got some good activity. I just wanted to let everybody know while you're taking the poll, we're aware that the chat, it looks like, isn't working for our participants, and we're working on that. But great participation here. I'm going to go ahead and, for the sake of time, end this first poll.
Amanda, it looks like the chat has been reset, so it should be working.
Super. Thank you so much. No problem. All right, so we've got our first set of results there. I'll go ahead and share our next poll here. And just as an FYI, if you're not using the most recent version of Zoom and you're not able to access the polls, feel free to just go ahead and put your response in the chat for us. Okay, we're seeing quite a few people saying active shooter. That's looking like the most difficult hazard that folks are facing, but good distribution here. I'm going to go ahead and end this poll as well and really quickly share the results just so you can kind of get a sense for what we're seeing. And I'm going to launch poll number 3. Got more options to choose from. It's like people are taking a second to look at everything. All right. Right now, most people are seeing that the dynamic conditions are proving challenging. We'll give this just a couple more seconds here. Really great participation though. All right. And just so everybody can take a look, those results are on the screen for just a second.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that information with us. That's really useful and really important for me to take back to my research team. So the question is, how do we take what we have learned and put it into practice? So we have received funding from FEMA IPAWS to build what we're calling an alert and warning message design dashboard. And I'm going to show you an example, which is a mock-up of what we have envisioned. It will be much nicer, much prettier, and much more useful than this that I built. I'm not a computer scientist nor software engineer. But the intention is to build a dashboard that an emergency manager or other alert originator can sit at. And the contents for each of the 5 different areas that are across the top of your screen, source, guidance, hazard, location, and time, will be made available to you based upon the type of hazard that you're writing the message for. We are building out what we call a lexicon, which contains the contents for each of these different categories of information that you will be able to use to build messages either ahead of time and store them as pre-designed messages, or you could do it on the fly if that's the way that you write messages. And we will also be providing some messages that we have tested with the public to confirm that they work as best as they possibly can for those really challenging messages that you struggle to write with because they're hard to alert for. We'll be working with subject matter experts to confirm that the hazard contents is correct, and working with message design experts to design the messages in their very best format, building off of the Maletti template. And then we'll be testing these messages with the public. So it might look like for active shooter, and of course, this is not the best example because there are questions about whether or not an active shooter message should go out. And we're aware of that because it might alert the shooter to the location of the message receiver. However, it would be building within a screen that a person could type into. They would choose from the different kinds of options from the drop-down menu. They would click on an option and it would help to build that message. And this again is just a mock-up, and we're working with our partners right now to build out other potential ways that it can be displayed. So this is a 3-year project and it has 5 different research tasks. We are currently in the process of conducting content analyses and subject matter interviews with some of our participants who are on the call today. In terms of building the content analysis, the content for the lexicon itself, we are utilizing messages that you all have written that we've been collecting from various sources. Thank you if you shared those with us in the past. This has been an ongoing process over several years. We're using those, and then we will be verifying and validating them with our subject matter experts as we build out individual messages. That content will help to build the lexicon within the message design dashboard. Some of you participated in some user stakeholders interviews already. And so thank you very much. And some of you will be contacted shortly for additional interviews. We have conducted an environmental scan of alert and warning software, so we understand the challenges of working with different software that you already are using, such as Everbridge or Code Red or AlertSense. And we get a better sense of how this tool will integrate in with those different dashboards themselves. We will be using experimental methods to assess and validate our messages as we move forward in the project. Our 4th task is to actually build and test the message design dashboard. So we are currently in the process of developing the database, the query performance, design, architecture, layout, and then we will be evaluating the dashboard once it has been completely designed. And in the end, we will be developing training materials and conducting workshops in order to train people on the use of the message design dashboard, likely in a scenario type of a setting, so that you actually get to practice making these messages at the time when the messages need to be written, or drawing from the templated messages that you've already developed. So this is a process that will be continuing and ongoing. We began in November. We've spent some time out at the IPAWS office in Maryland. Our our group of researchers, postdocs, graduate students are all working on this daily. The interviews are ongoing. The building of the lexicon is pretty far along already. And we hope to have the dashboard, a mock-up done within the first year of the project, with the hope that by the end of the second year, we're out giving trainings on this. I'm trying to keep this presentation very short. I see a lot of things in the chat. I hope that we can actually have some question and answer time for this. I have one more poll question. This comes directly from my colleagues in the Center for Technology and Government, because they're trying to think about how you actively design your alert and warning messages. We want to know how you write your messages. And so you'll see in the next poll question, three very specific ways that we think you might actually construct messages. So if you could put that one up, Amanda, that would be great.
All right, looks like we've got some people starting to take this poll. We've got a relatively even split right now, with, I would say, a very slight majority saying they just start and wing it. So we've got, yeah, good split here. I'll give you a couple more seconds to take this poll. All right.
Okay. Thank you very much. So this is my team at the University at Albany. We took our masks off for about 5 seconds for that photo. And we've been working together for the last few months, building the message design dashboard and conducting our research. I'm very happy to take questions. And so Amanda, how would you like to handle that? Would you like to go into the chat or take it verbally?
So I'm going to have, I think Carol and Leah have been collecting some questions that have come up in the chat. I don't know if one of you wants to get on and report on some of the questions that we've gotten.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. This is Carol. And first of all, there is great excitement, as you can see from the chat, and people saying that this will need to be promoted at every level in the emergency management community once it's done. A lot of interest, I think, also in helping you with the beta testing, as well as interest in how might people be able to stay up to date on this project as it moves forward.
Probably we will be keeping in touch with you, Carol. And as you're sending out information or doing the technical trainings at the regional level, I'd be happy to share with you the updates so that you can keep people alerted about how things are moving along. We will be attending some conferences regionally in the future. I'm working with Jody Smith from the IPAWS program, who I believe is also on this call. And we're identifying places where the team might travel to and spend time with emergency managers and alerting authorities, talking directly with them about their questions about the project. Additionally, press releases that might go out. I haven't set up a specific mechanism for you to communicate directly with me, but you're always welcome to send us emails and we will respond to you. I could put my email address in the chat. And additionally, if you send us, in the chat, we're putting up a link to a Google document. And if you provide to us your Twitter address or your email address or both, we can make sure that we get information out to you that way.
That's great. There were a couple of people also that talked about, the struggle with meeting limited English proficiency requirements and dual language messaging and translation. How might your project deal with that?
So one of the things that Derek is building into the software design is a grade level assessment of how complicated the message is and how difficult it would be for an individual reader to read that message. And that will be built into the messaging so that as you are building your message, it checks it for you and lets you know that there are specific pieces that need to be adapted and changed. The lexicon will have contents that we intend to simplify as best we can so that the language is accessible to people to use. We want to try to reduce the complexity for you as a message writer and also for your message receivers. The Spanish language translation is something that we are taking into account. We will provide some strategies for that, but we also recognize that to truly do that part of a project, the kind of diligent reflection that is necessary, this is something that really does need additional research to really investigate the best ways to communicate in a language other than English. So what we will be providing at the conclusion of this project is the initial start, and then we're hoping to do additional work as the project continues after the first launch of the project.
That's great. And I'm loving seeing in the chat, people are also sharing other ideas on plain language and sort of those kinds of tips. And I see a lot of activity, people putting email in the chat. We will gather those as well as from the Google Forms. And Jeanette, also, we are very happy to provide updates through this forum, our semi-annual webinar, as well as offer assistance as we keep going. As you can see, we've got a very motivated group here of people who really want to move this field forward and figure out how to do this better, easier, faster, et cetera. So all good. So I guess one other thing you'll see in the chat, and I don't know, there were definitely some other issues that people were having with different kinds of threats or hazards. California with their power outages, that's always tough. Sort of new disasters that are coming up, the post-fire debris issues that are now more prevalent with the wildfire moving across the country, things like that. So as you think about threats, I may have missed this. Are your threats or hazards sort of locked down at this point? Are you open to including new hazards? How is that working?
That's such a good question, Carol. We've been working with the iPods team to identify the hazards that we want to do message testing which is a much smaller subset of the broader project. And with that, we're probably looking at between 5 and 10 different hazards that we will test, because doing experimental message testing is a whole different beast beyond doing the lexicon building and working with subject matter experts. I'm happy to take into consideration the new hazards that have emerged over the last 10 years or so, and I know that there have been additional hazards. The pandemic itself is something that we didn't, when we first started doing this work in 2011, that wasn't even on our scope. We didn't consider that as something that we needed to think about. The rolling public safety blackouts in California, the power outages, that wasn't something that we were thinking about at the time. So certainly if there are additional things that rise to the level of need for that we can help with, we'd like to take it into consideration. At some point, there will have to be a cutoff, but we don't actually have a cutoff listed right now. And so we're working with a real range of hazards that are natural, technological, and terrorist oriented. And there's about 45, I believe, in our current list. But if you put things in the chat or add it to, send us an email, we're happy to take it into consideration, because ultimately we're building this because you've said as alert originators that one of your biggest challenges is writing messages. And as we look at the historical data of the wireless emergency alerts that have been sent over the last 12 years, we see where those challenges really are. We want to help to address those problems and also reduce people's concerns about actually using the WIA system to get messages out. It is one of the best strategies that we have to alert people who are not opting into warning systems. And we really want to make it work for you.
That's great. And, you know, we are very happy to help you. See, we have a very engaged group here as we move forward. We can keep bringing this up. Jody is such a great partner to this. She attends all the alert and warning technical assistance delivery so that she can answer questions around the technical side. And she's on right now as well. So actually, I'm going to ask Jody if you would post in the chat. Someone did ask, at what point with will 90 character message devices because the phones that only allow 90 character messages to be received are being deactivated? What's your sense for how will iPods encourage movement from that 90 character only to the 90 and 360 now that so many phones accept the 360 and the 90 character phones are getting phased out? So if you could put that in the chat, I'm sure that's going to encourage a lot of conversation. But Amanda, back to you. Thank you so much. And as we go through the rest of these presentations, please do put things in the chat. We are monitoring that very closely.